All
Okay.
right. So I asked Preeti to do this because we see stuff about India and Pakistan in the news and that there's a conflict, and I'm like, I don't know a whole lot about it, but Preeti is much more familiar with it because she's very, very smart. Um, and so she's going to give us about, I said, about an hour. If there's questions, you can submit them to me, and we'll go from there. So that's our subject. So if you're yapping about other stuff, please don't. So Preeti, go ahead, take it away.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And this is definitely something that I'm sort of familiar with, mainly because this is one of those topics where it's like a never-ending thing and something that even for myself I don't quite understand it because it's the what what is that considering that there's in terms of cultures it's not very different between like India and Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of looking at this, it all comes down to like looking at the from a historical perspective, it's everything that happened post partition. That's where this stems from. In that, with the British leaving India, and at that point, India and Pakistan were basically one giant India.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of this came about as a power struggle between what we know as India today and Pakistan, in the sense of each of the sides kind of wanted their own state from a religious purpose, in that India, with the Hindu majority, wanted a state for themselves, and Pakistan, with the Muslim majority, wanted a place for themselves as well. And the British, as they were leaving, decided, yes, we can do that. This is how we're going to do it. And they, of course, carved like an arbitrary line through one of the Indian states, which is, in this case, the state of Punjab. So they took
Mm-hmm.
basically, if you take all of Pakistan, or what I should call West Pakistan, take that and what we know as the state of Punjab within India today, that all used to be one giant state, which was known as the Punjab region.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically got trimmed down so that two-thirds went to Pakistan and one-third of Punjab went to India.
Mm-hmm.
And that is basically on the western side where the line for partition happened. And on the eastern side, you also had something similar with what we know as Bangladesh today. That used
Mm-hmm.
to be East Pakistan before they had their independence.
When did the partition happen?
Partition happened in 1947.
47. Okay.
So up until 1947, India was under British rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one just big, giant landmass area known as India.
Mm-hmm.
So that included what we know as modern day Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh.
Okay.
And so we had those are the like areas. And the biggest contention that the conflict came about is the way that the power was divided, because you had sort of two ruling figures. So you had on the Hindu side, you had Nehru, who wanted to have a proper like Indian state that was like a Hindu majority. And then you also had at that time the other player to this is Jinnah, who wanted a predominantly Muslim state. And both of them also wanted to be in charge of the country. they couldn't really decide who should be able to do that. And as the British were leaving, they had their talks and were like, okay, we'll give the Hindus their own state, we'll give the Muslims their own. And then you also had a lot of the other religions, like the Sikhs, they also wanted their own state. And the British said, yes, we'll give you guys your own state too. And it was, okay, so now how are we going to split all of this land up?
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, they had the line of demarcation that they arbitrarily drew. And it ended up on the west side. Pakistan got 2/3 of the state of Punjab. India retained a third of what was basically known as the Punjab region.
Uh-huh.
And then on the eastern side, you had another small area that was given to Pakistan as East Pakistan. And so in the middle, you had all of India. And at the very top of India, you have the state of Kashmir. And with that, it was divided up in a way that it's basically half of Kashmir was for Pakistan, half was for India.
Okay.
But it's kind of the both sides can have it. And that's where a lot of the conflict lies, because for Pakistan, it kind of turned into the we want more land. And so as they tried, these are the conflicts that would keep coming up, because it was always seeming like, okay, there's always a fight between India and Pakistan. And so I actually do have like just a couple of notes that I looked up based off the history, because it's something, having heard this myself, like going through stories, especially with my grandparents, because like with my granddad in particular, he's actually, for him, he was actually born in Lahore, which what we know as Pakistan.
Oh, okay.
So he was originally born there, and even like modern day, when we had to do his passport, we actually have to write that. The way his passport is written, it doesn't say he's from Pakistan. His passport was always written to say he was from Lahore in Pakistan / India.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, very weird. And
That's
very
like saying
confusing.
you're from New York / United States / Canada.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so that was always something that I was like kind of fascinated by, because I was like, it's two different countries. How do you account for that? But it was of course pre-partition. So it was just one India.
Right.
And so with that one, that's what happened. And so with that, a couple of quick notes there is that it was in India and Pakistan were, up until 1947, one country ruled by the British.
What were they before the British came? Just all India?
It was all India. And even going further back into that, a lot of it was, they were under, prior to the British, so very quickly I'll touch on this, because this does get into, it's even more history. Beyond that, before the British, it actually used to be under, so India, to a certain extent, was always princely states. So all the states within India used to be basically ruled by the principalities or the royals. So every state had its own royal family.
Right. Okay.
And so that's where you would end up with all of these princes. And so they were all princely states. And you also had, prior to the British, you also had like the Sikhs. They had the Sikh Empire, which stretched into what we know as like northern India all the way into parts of Afghanistan.
Oh wow.
And so it used to be like really big. And then on the west side, you would have all of what we know is like Pakistan. That whole area was under the, it was known as the Sikh Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that was up until the British, which they came around the late 1700s, early 1800s. And
Okay.
so going through that, that's kind of just very quickly doing history
Right.
of India. And then before that, you had the Mughal Empire that was ruling most of India. And of course, the princely states, and they would be under, a lot of them were under like Mughal rule prior to that. And then, of course, once the British came in and, of course, colonized India, and then
everything, yes.
and then you had then 1947, which is, of course, if you look at the Independence Day, you'll see Pakistan's Independence Day is August 14th. India's Independence Day is August 15th, and that was because of the way they did it, where they basically, the British left, and on August, like right around that time is when they were like, okay, we're leaving. You guys do what you want now. Here's your areas. And that's why, and of course, between India and Pakistan, you can't have a shared Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was decided that Pakistan would have the 14th, India would have the 15th. So every August 14th and 15th is their respective Independence Days.
Okay.
And so it was basically that point, that was the day two nations were born. India being the Hindu majority, but being very secular and taking in all the other religions that fall under India. And then Pakistan being primarily an Islamic republic.
Okay.
And India is a republic as well. So we also have that. But of course, the ruling religion of India is Hinduism.
Right.
And so that's where the partition happened. And in that period, you had 14 million people who were displaced because they basically got told, and this is part of even my heritage with my family, with my granddad's family, where they were basically told, you have a choice. You can stay in Pakistan or you can move to India. And that's when we had sort of this like great migration between sides. And it was you basically take your basic necessities and you move.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Muslims, if they wanted to, the ones who were in India were allowed to move into Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had any non-Muslims like Hindus, Sikhs, Christians, whomever, if they wanted to leave Pakistan and move to India, they could do that.
Okay.
And in that process, that's kind of what happened with my family, with my granddad and my grandma. And in their case, they had just gotten married like the year before partition. And so my granddad actually moved, his family moved to India, back to my grandma's village.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the city that my grandma grew up in. That's where they moved when partition happened. They decided they're going to leave their town. They had so my granddad's grandfather actually had a village for himself that was under his name, and it's still there today.
So what would have happened if they hadn't moved?
if if they hadn't moved, there would have been it would have been
Like persecution or?
certain amounts of persecution, or there would have been some sort of system that would have taken place of like you pay a tax or whatever.
Okay.
And that, or depending on how the neighborhood was, you may or may not be protected.
Right. Okay.
And so, you know, in some cases, they could just stay there and like really nothing would happen to them. Or in other cases, it was like if you don't leave, you're probably going to get killed or converted.
Right.
And that's what it would come down to. And with that, you had like with the 14 million people being displaced, then out of that, because of all the violence that sparked up, there was about 2 million who actually got killed.
Oh God.
And you had a lot of it, and like I've heard stories. I used to hear stories of like with my granddad telling us of how he basically had him, his parents, my grandma, and some of like their animals and things that they brought with them into India. He basically had they came by train from Pakistan into India, and the train that he was on, him and his family, that was the last train that actually came intact in the sense of the people on that train were still alive.
Oh God.
Where it was after that train, every train that was coming out of Pakistan or coming like out of India into Pakistan, like going either direction, there were stories where you had basically mob rule and you had no survivors on the trains because they would stop them either as they crossed the borders, somewhere along that journey, and when they got to the final destination, it would be horrendous where it was just mass killings. Oh, and it's horrible.
Oh wow.
It's like that's it's horrible. Terrible. But these are the stories that I kind of grew up hearing.
Uh-huh.
And just this is like knowing this is part of history for us. It's like this is part of our history.
Right. I can see why that would cause some friction even today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had that. And that led into the and the biggest reason for the friction also, and it continues like to this day, is the area of Kashmir. So the very northern part of India and Pakistan, there's a state called Jammu and Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
That state is still in contention to this day, and it's because they were given a choice of which side they wanted to go on, because that was a princely run state, and the princes of that state were basically allowed to pick what side they want to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And so those ended up, in essence, becoming disputed territory to present day.
Wow.
And so, like, that led to the first Indo-Pakistani War, which went from 1947, so start of partition, to 1948.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended with the UN intervening with a ceasefire and a line of control, or an LOC, was established at that point.
Okay.
And so it became, these are the lines for Jammu and Kashmir. Of this part is for Pakistan and this part is for India. And that line still exists today. There is still that line of control, and there's actually a couple of Bollywood movies that have actually been made too. So this is a very like interesting subject that Bollywood always touches on it every so often. And so over the years, especially in the 90s, it happened. There was a lot of movies that were made surrounding partition, surrounding the line of control, the whole India-Pakistan tensions.
Is this an area that is like rich in farmland, rich in natural resources, something that is just like the, like
Yes.
Ukraine is like the breadbasket that
Yeah. So it's interesting you kind of bring that up. So in this case, Punjab, which is like predominantly, that's like the sixth state essentially. For the Sikhs, that's like the biggest state, and that is actually the breadbasket for agriculture. So a lot of your agriculture in India, and even with now Pakistan, but mainly like going back to like pre-British days, India has Punjab as the breadbasket for agriculture. That is one of the biggest reasons why the Sikhs weren't allowed to have their own state.
Oh,
Because that's how the agriculture would get lost in that sense.
right.
And so so you have that. Kashmir and Jammu, those areas, yeah, they are rich in natural resources. That is, in a lot of cases, that's kind of the beginnings of some of the rivers, because you're also getting into the mountain ranges. So this area is actually near the Himalaya mountains. And so it's a very mountainous region, and that's I think also kind of where the Ganges River starts. That's like the start of.
Oh my
Ganges.
goodness.
So yes, you're like way up there. You're like this is like the northern tip. And so yeah, it's a very mountainous region. So very like it's a very like I guess a naturally rich area and a lot of natural resources there.
So everyone fights over it. Yep.
And so of course everyone fights over it. And with and going back to like 1947, 1948, going back to like the first sort of Indo-Pak war, India ended up getting 2/3 the control of that region.
Oh.
So they have 2/3 control, and Pakistan has 1/3 of the control there.
Yeah.
So again, another reason why the conflict exists.
Right.
And so we have that. And then from there, you had, again, another war in 1965 that was between India and Pakistan over Kashmir.
What was the outcome of that?
In this case, the outcome was no land between the two countries was lost or gained. They still, India still, to this day, still has its 2/3, and Pakistan still has its 1/3. And they still fight over it. Yeah. They're still trying, somehow or the other.
Is that where the recent, was it, did they do bombings?
That was more, I think, near. No, that was near Amritsar. That was the most recent one. That's near the near the city of Amritsar, which is in Punjab, on the India side. And that is another area. It's a border area, because the Pakistan border is, I think it's like 22 or 25 kilometers, something like that. It's like super close.
Yeah.
And so they had an issue there. And that's where the most recent tensions came up. And so, of course, the whole Kashmir thing has always kind of been the center for a little while, at least through like the 60s. 1965, they had their second war over Kashmir. And that one, At that time, it was mediated actually by the Soviet Union back then.
Mm-hmm.
They intercepted and they came in and did a mediation then, and India ended up kind of having the upper hand on the military side because their military was, I guess, better equipped than the Pakistani military.
Okay.
But they had both sides had like thousands of casualties. And then and then getting into that in 1971, that was the third point of contention that a conflict arose between India and Pakistan. And this time, it was over what we now know as Bangladesh. Back then, it was East Pakistan.
Right.
And that war was the independence movement of East Pakistan getting their independence and becoming what we know the country of Bangladesh.
Okay.
And in this case, India supported East Pakistan or Bangladesh to gain its independence.
All right. Well, yeah, and it's funny you said that was 71.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was 5 then, so I don't ever remember there not being a Bangladesh.
Yeah.
You know, I was just too little. So.
Yeah. And so that's when so Bangladesh was born from that. And then from there they had another conflict that ran from about 1984 to 2003. And that one was the Saishan Glacier conflict.
They were fighting over a glacier?
I think so, yes.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Okay. All right.
And that one was, and it is over a glacier because I can, in the notes that I had, one of the notes that I found as I was kind of doing my research, it's the longest running cold weather military conflict in the world.
Oh my goodness, yes. That's a really long time.
It is. It is, and it was and they had a ceasefire that they agreed to in 2003.
Yeah, but you said it was from 84 to 2003.
Yes.
Good Lord, that's a long time.
Oh yeah, I mean, and as it is, like 84, India was already was having its own like mini war, so to say, because they also had 84 is also when you had in India the assassination of Indira Gandhi.
Right. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah, talking about growing up during that time, I was around 2 years old, so I don't remember anything about it, but it was one of those times where you had in that time, it was the Sikhs had to be on the lookout because being that the prime minister was assassinated, and the and one of the like reasons for her being assassinated is because she actually attacked the Sikhs' holiest shrine in Amritsar.
That's not good to attack. That's not good to attack holy sites.
No,
it's not. It's not.
It's not, but that's what she ended up doing, and it was because there were some militants who were hiding out in the temple complex, and she wanted them gone. And so she decided to have what they called Operation Blue Star, and that was a whole, like, internal India conflict happening, but again, going right into this conflict as well, with like tensions of India and Pakistan. And then getting into that, and then with that one, you also had in like the late 90s, up until that point, India and Pakistan weren't really too much of a threat in terms of the world stage.
Right.
um, because they didn't have nuclear weapons.
But yeah, India got them around then, didn't they?
In 1998, India got theirs. They became a nuclear nation.
Mm-hmm.
And 99, Pakistan got theirs. And it's also around the same time when the war in Kargil happened,
Oh.
which is another. It's it's an Indian territory, um, again towards like the north.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these conflicts between India and Pakistan are always at their border,
Of course.
and generally right at where the line of control is.
Okay.
And so that always like seems to happen. And so in 1999 they had the Kargil War, and that was where by that point in time both countries could be considered nuclear powers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was another big threat, because you now have two nations who are at conflict, and it becomes that kind of becomes the catalyst for then sort of world intervention to make sure that they don't set their nukes off on each other.
Right. Yeah. You just annihilated each other. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, and so that war, both sides suffered losses. Pakistan more so they had more like heavier losses, and that war ended with India winning.
Okay.
And so then from there, moving into the like 2000s, like the early 2000s, they had they started doing more dialoguing and having summits and trying to like broker a deal so that you don't have the two nations going at each other.
Right.
Because the constant threat there that always, and it's even now it's still there, is essentially they've got nukes pointed at each other.
Right. Like us, yeah, like us and everybody else too.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
with them it's a little bit more like volatile at times, just because it's anything can set them off.
Yeah, well, we have Humpty Dumpty McFuckstick at the helm now, so. You know?
Yeah, and so that's kind of where the conflict is, and a lot of it is just, of course, government and military.
So do you see it like as a stalemate almost right now because they both are evenly matched almost?
Pretty much. I mean, it's always like that, in the sense of it's always pretty much a stalemate. It's just one side over the other.
Yeah.
There's always something happening.
But it seems like it's always over Kashmir.
It's all, yeah.
Because even when I looked up in here, it was it looked like the last time that, yeah, May 7th, India launches attacks on Pakistan after something happened in Kashmir. It's like, oh, okay, so you're still okay. And that was fairly recent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the last conflict that India and Pakistan had, which was a month ago.
Yeah.
That's where it came from. It stemmed from that.
Do you think that there is some sort of negotiated, I don't know, compromise that would ever satisfy both sides?
No.
That's honest.
The only thing that would, and I think with Pakistan, it would be the give us Kashmir. India's not going to give it up. And all it is, it turns into, at the end of the day, Pakistan wants more land, because look at how big India is, and look at how look at the size of Pakistan. Look at the size of India. India's bigger.
Excuse me.
Like,
It is, but yeah, it's
and so
interesting.
and a little bit of that also is going back to Bangladesh getting its independence. For Pakistan, that's like, well, we lost a piece.
Yeah.
Like, we lost a piece. We should be able to gain another piece.
Oh God.
And it's like, where are we gonna go? Okay, well, there's Kashmir. We have 1/3. We should get more.
So in the conflict between India and Pakistan, does Bangladesh just kind of stay out of it?
Pretty much.
It's pretty smart.
Honestly, nobody really gets involved in the India-Pakistan conflict, because what ends up happening is it's just both sides going at each other.
Yeah.
Every few years, it turns into the India or Pakistan decides, oh, one of us should control Kashmir.
Yeah.
But neither side is willing to give up their piece of it.
And it seems like, I mean, that's why I wanted you to do this, because it seems like there's been a conflict my entire lifetime, and I never really understood why. First of all, what are you fighting over, and why are you fighting? And okay, it's over Kashmir. Lord,
And I can tell
that's
you,
a bigger piece. Yeah.
in this case, like, it's to a certain extent like something I find funny, because, like, in my case, one of my sisters, who I've known since college, she and I laugh about it all the time, only because it's like, she's Pakistani.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, her parents, like, we used to have this discussion, like, before her mom passed away. We would always have this talk, especially with, like, her dad. Like, he and I would always, like, talk about this, where it's even for him, talking about partition, it's with that, how it changed things, because he's, like, his family is from India, from the Indian side.
Right.
And, like, her mom's family is from the Pakistan side.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always like, how, and in our case, it's how can you two be friends? She's Pakistani, you're Indian. How can you two be friends? And it's like, because for us, it's like, we're the same culture. We don't care. We don't care what country we're from. We're essentially the same culture.
Yeah.
And in our case, we both say we're Punjabi. Because we're essentially from the state of Punjab. That's the state within India and Pakistan that we associate ourselves with.
Right.
We speak the same language, especially between with Pakistan. They'll speak Urdu and Punjabi. There's a lot of places that they speak Urdu's like their main language, and then you also have Punjabi there.
Mm-hmm.
And from like a Sikh perspective, a lot of our like Sikh temples are still in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Even like the founder of Sikhism, Guru Nanak, his birthplace is in Pakistan.
Are you? I don't know. Do you get like reciprocity? Can you go and visit them?
That was something actually that recently came up. So they actually recently did that. They actually for the founder's birth anniversary, I think it was like his 350th birth anniversary or something like that. And they actually did it where they had an open border crossing for Sikhs to go and visit. Like,
That's
they could
nice.
take a train from Amritsar to Lahore, and they can go. They have what they call it's called the Kartarpur corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, you're allowed to cross the border from India into Pakistan to go visit the temples there, like all the Sikh temples.
That's nice. And I mean, that seems like, like almost a first step to saying, yeah, it's fine. Because there's a mosque here where It's and come visit and but like you said with the friend who's from Pakistan, I had a at the University of Tulsa, I had two friends. One was from Iraq and one was from Iran.
Mm-hmm.
But that was in the 80s, and Iraq and Iran were at war.
Mm-hmm.
And those two girls were just best friends. And both of them said, we don't want to ever go back. Because
Mm-hmm.
they were like, we're going to go to grad school, then we're going to go to grad school, then we're going to go to grad school. We'll just be perpetual students. And I was like, why? And she goes, because if we go back, we have to hate each other and we have to fight each other. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, how stupid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and like even within this, and again, talking about my sister, for her, it's talking about India, Pakistan. For her, her husband, as funny as it is, he's Indian.
Mm-hmm.
She's married to an Indian. He's Muslim, but
It would be kind of hard not to have crossover.
yeah.
I mean, your next door neighbors. I mean, that's that's kind of like saying, well, no one from Oklahoma could marry someone from Texas.
Yeah.
Well, that's just silly. So is China? I'm seeing China brought up. Is that a problem with? Are they instigating? Are they making it worse?
Well, China is a whole nother. That's like a whole nother thing. With India, because with China, not only do you have like there is like some Chinese conflict, like India-China conflict. They have their own territory disputes.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, on the eastern side, because there are parts of India that touch China.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like some disputes there. But another piece of that also is the fact that with China, one of the contentions is also the fact that India gives the Dalai Lama refugee status.
Oh.
They took him in. They're the ones who actually gave him refugee status, and have established refugee colonies for the Tibetans.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another point, because of course with that whole conflict of Tibet,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot of Tibetans who migrate over to India so that they can stay in the Tibetan colonies within India.
Okay.
So that's like another like India-China conflict. Although with them, it again, because of the border side of things. In their case, they're not fighting over land or anything. Most of their stuff is usually just like politically based. Like
Right.
their conflict is mostly political.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and was Burma actually called that? Was that area called Burma?
That was known as Myanmar.
Oh, okay.
That was originally
They
called
keep
Myanmar.
changing. They keep changing names.
And the reason they changed the names is, again, Burma was the British name for it.
Right.
And once, of course, the British left, and once they gained independence, they went back to their old names.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did that. Even with India, like some of the Indian cities,
Mm-hmm.
you have like Calcutta is an example where Calcutta was the British name, and the Indian name is Kolkata.
Oh, okay.
And you also have Chennai.
Mm-hmm.
Chennai originally by the British was called Madras.
Mm-hmm.
And once the British left, again, back to like sometime in the late 80s, early 90s, India went into this, we're going to change all the names. Whatever names the British had. Bombay is a good example too. Bombay is the name that was given by the British to Mumbai, and India
Oh,
changed it
boy.
back.
Oh, okay. I'm glad they're changing it back because I mean, then in the United States, there's indigenous cultures that had their names changed, and it's like, you're what?
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's actually really good. I think it's weird that you would change it to begin with. You know,
Well, the only reason it got changed to begin with is because the British couldn't pronounce half those names, and they needed something that was easier. And so what they did is they changed it to something easier for them to pronounce. And then
Mhm.
once they left, then it was okay, we're going to change it back.
Yeah. Well, and we mispronounce so many. I mean, like Iran and Iraq, and um, it's not Iran.
That's just the Americanized
And
way of
then
saying
Turkey.
it.
But the one I really don't understand is Egypt. I don't know where we got the name Egypt from. Maybe British,
Hmm.
because that country is called Nusra
Yeah,
or Mosrir,
yeah.
depending on what country you're from. But it's like, where did we get the name Egypt from? I mean,
It's
it's not even
somehow or the
close.
other somebody did it.
Yeah. You had no idea how to pronounce Myanmar until now. Oh, well, now we learned something.
Yeah. I mean, okay, the way it's spelled, if you phonetically sound it out, it would sound like Myanmar,
Hmm.
but then it's like if you hear people like from there speaking the name, it's like it's Myanmar. It's like, oh,
Myanmar. Yeah. So, do you think if the British colonization had not occurred, would we still be here? Would it be as fucked up as it was? Is it,
so actually
human?
that one's very interesting because prior to the British taking over India, it would be interesting to see if that hadn't happened where we were, because at that point you also had like the north, you had it was the Sikh Empire,
Hmm.
and with the British coming in, the way they actually came in is so what they did is the emperor of the Sikh Empire, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, they actually took his son, Dalip Singh. The British actually took him when he was like, I think, a baby, and took him over to England and taught him to be English, converted
Oh,
him to Christianity,
oh God.
and literally were like, okay, you're going to do this. And he was a part of the court of Queen Victoria. So he was basically seen as like an adopted child of hers.
Oh,
And
how weird.
it was the okay, once he became of age, he was sent back to India. And that's how the British acquired the northern part of India. Because then the British came in and said, hey, can you sign this territory over to us?
Hmm.
Because by then his dad was gone, so Maharaja
Yeah.
Ranjit Singh was gone, and it's the okay, who's it transferred to? It's transferred to his son. His son, being pretty much raised to be British and
Right.
follow um, the British, he just signed over the land to the British and said, "Yeah, sure, here, take it." And in adulthood, he realized that he made a mistake and actually spent the remainder of his life trying to fight that, and
Hmm.
was never able to go back to India. Even today, his body is buried in one of the cemeteries in England
What
because they would
happened to
not.
the royal families?
Um,
Do they still exist?
they do. They do
Okay.
exist. They're just completely powerless. They are more
Right.
just figures now than like any sort of like they never had power after that. It was the
Hmm.
like after the British came in at that point, you just didn't have the royal families didn't really exist as they had no position of power. They would just essentially became like kind of servants to the British Empire.
Because I have a friend in Malaysia, and they have royal families there that are in districts. And then she said, and I thought, I'm like, I'm amazed this works, but it does. They apparently take turns being in power.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a rotating basis, and it's like, okay, well, you're going to get 7. I don't know how many years it is, but they take turns like running the country, and I'm like, well, that's very diplomatic of you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they have multiple royal families there too. I was just like, that's interesting.
Oh yeah, you can still like India itself, like the entire country itself, like states, from a state's perspective within India, every state had royal families.
Yeah.
You know, going back through history. And those royal families are still there today. One of the biggest ones, the ones that are like most well known these days in India are the royal families in Jaipur.
Okay.
Because literally, like all the palaces within Jaipur, most of them now, what they've done is they've basically taken those palaces, turned them into like hotels, and that's like how they get their money essentially now.
It's a that's a good way to do it. I mean, everyone wants to stay in a palace, you know.
Yeah.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, like on my last India trip, my aunt actually took us to Jaipur, literally right after Mom and I landed there. Mm-hmm. And like right after we landed in India, the next day, our first excursion was we were off to Jaipur, and we were there for 3 days, and that was one of the cool things I saw because we actually got to go the main palace, the city palace. Mm-hmm. The like they have their royal family. They're still working royals, and they've actually converted part of the palace into a museum.
Oh, nice.
And so they have that where you can actually go explore the museum and go through like the history of mm-hmm. of the states and everything there.
Well, that's awesome. Is the structure of government really radically different between India and Pakistan?
No, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same.
They basically, the way the government was stood up, mm-hmm. they basically run it the way, again, because of the British, it's a very similar system in that they have it's a multi-party system. They also have like UK or England, they have they have parliament.
Yeah.
So they have like the upper lower house, and they have the prime minister. They have a president, who doesn't really hold any power. All the powers with the prime minister, but yeah, they do have the again, similar system. Mm-hmm. Like they're between India and Pakistan, they have the exact same government system because that's how it was stood up when the split happened.
Right.
That's how they did it.
So they should be able to come to some sort of agreement, but they probably won't.
No, because the thing is, it's why are you going to come up with an agreement when it's mainly a power struggle, and that's never going to get resolved.
Right. Yeah. Well, does anyone have any questions for Preeti?
Yeah, sorry, I haven't been paying too much attention.
Well, there haven't been any. People have been pretty much anything that I saw in there that somebody mentioned, you know, like China.
Yeah.
Kind of. Do they have a House of Lords?
No, because they don't. Well, they can't really do that because there's no like aristocracy.
Ah.
But essentially, like, theirs is with India and Pakistan, the government system, they have essentially what we call Congress,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think we have two houses.
So it's
I
like
know there's
a
a parliament in there. That I know.
okay. That sounds
Because
good.
you have like multi.
Well, you said upper house, lower house. So
Yeah, I think.
I mean that makes sense. So
Actually, let's find out because now I'm
Okay.
curious. In my case, I
think
know
the House
more.
of
I
Lords
think
should be
about
a thing in the
American
UK.
government
Well,
than I do Indian.
you're gonna have to talk to England about that.
Yeah, so like in
Commons and
England,
Lords.
yeah,
Well,
there's
upper,
a House
lower,
of Commons and a
Commons.
House of Lords.
Yes. Yeah, you're gonna have to run that by England because I don't think that they care what we think. I'm positive they don't.
Yes, they do. So yes, they do have two houses. The Indian Parliament's composition is there are two houses in Parliament. One is called the Lok Sabha and one is called the Rajya Sabha. And I'm trying to in my head think what so the Rajya Sabha is the Council of States, and the Lok Sabha is the House of People.
Okay.
So I get in a way similar to us and our Congress, because we have House of Representatives, and then we have the Senate.
Right.
And so in this case, if we look at it on the American example, Rajya Sabha would be considered the Senate, and then the Lok Sabha would be considered the House of Representatives.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And that's sort of the breakdown. And I see a question in here. Yes, there were a few Dutch and Portuguese colonies. But again, with the sort of British getting out, all of them also got out. I know that Goa was the Portuguese colony. The Dutch, I don't know exactly which state, but you do see some of these, a lot of these places, you'll still see some of those influences, especially in their architecture. And in some cases also some of the language, because you'll see, like Goa, you'll see people who speak Portuguese. Aside from like the 27 or 28, like, I guess, state languages.
You've got a lot of languages in India.
Oh, yeah, because every state has their own language. And then within that language, like within the state language, there's a whole bunch of dialects.
Yeah.
And like Punjab is a great example of this, because with Punjab, what ends up happening is that taking the modern context of India and Pakistan, if you look at Punjab itself just as a state, you literally have Punjabi being spoken there. You have Pashto, you have Patani, which is like that's mostly on the Pakistan side, but yeah, you have and Punjabi. Those are like the main languages all spoken there.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, thanks so much for giving us the talk, Preeti. If you guys have any questions, you can always send them to Preeti, and in one of our normal lives, we can always also bring up other stuff if you think of it. She's obviously smart and probably will know the answer.
And so if I don't, I will always I can always look it up or find it somehow.
Right. So I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna take a nap. And I will talk to you. I'll see you tonight.
All right.
Thanks so much, Preeti.
No problem. Bye. Okay, bye.